Part of the mystery when we read this history is that Germany prided itself on being the most civilized country in Europe with its traditions of music, of philosophy, of science, just the level of distinction and cultivation. And what's striking as you replay this story is the way in which Hitler, with this kind of ragtag band of followers and strutting, shouting style, broke through the barriers that most Germans probably thought were there. And there's a passage in your book where you talk in particular about the German business establishment and what it did. And I just want to read that passage, which again I found haunting. The country's political establishment, big business, the military, and the church had initially dismissed the Nazis as a band of loudmouth hooligans who would never attract wide support. Over time, they saw value in the party as a bulwark against communism, but nothing more. They underestimated the man, Hitler, because of his lack of schooling and were taken in by his attempts at charm. He was, to members of the old guard, clearly an amateur who was in over his head and unlikely to remain popular for long. There is a way in which elements of our business establishment have decided, with all of the disruption, all of the, loud and troubling comments that come out of this White House, to make, in effect, a tactical alliance. They like the tax plan, they like this and that. I'm wondering, when you're with longtime Republican friends on Capitol Hill, who were people, in a sense, who hold the balance right now in terms of how this story plays out, what do you tell them? And do you ever reflect back on what happened with the German establishment in a similar situation so long ago?
Well, I think that what is interesting to me is that, and I do have Republican friends, is that they are, in some ways, hoping this will go away, and that there are certain advantages, because there is a difference, I think, between Democrats and Republicans about the role of government, generally. And so I think that there are certain that prefer not having a lot of regulations and government intrusion, and certainly like the new tax plan. And so it's kind of, this will go away, and there are those that I think to a great extent are part of what I call normalizing what is going on, kind of thinking we'll get over this. And I do think that what needs to happen more, and I kind of made a, we all know the statement, see something, say something. I have added to that, do something. And I do think that one can't just kind of assume that because, what I find interesting, the unemployment rate is down, and the stock market seems to be booming. The bottom line is, actually, the unemployment rate was going down under President Obama, but the bottom line is there is this sense that economically things are not so bad, and especially if one forgets about how bad they are for other people. And so I think there is this kind of approach of we'll get over it, which I think makes me very nervous. And you were talking about Congress. I have spent a lot of time up there recently, and I keep telling them it's Article 1 time. The first article of the Constitution is about the power of Congress, and we're about to have elections. And so one of the things that I have on my to-do list is for people that disagree with this to get involved, to either, I'm not saying this to the Republicans, but to others, to run for office, But I do think that part of what bothers me, and I'm not saying this just because I'm sitting at the Washington Post, but the disrespect for the press. Freedom of the press is a basic aspect of democracy, invented by Americans. And by talking about the press as the enemy of the people, it's outrageous. And I think that's where people, whatever party, have to start saying, that is not normal, that cannot happen. Because if you go back to the 30s, part of what did go on was just pure propaganda, and this amateur Hitler really being able to find some professionals like Goebbels in order to use the media to enlarge his story and then to build on this nationalist part. What is interesting when you talk about intellectual Germans, a lot of them liked really very nationalist literature and music, and so while being intellectuals, they were able then also to kind of integrate it into a picture that they wanted that suited Hitler in terms of the grandeur of the German nation.